Good morning, everyone. I'm Kim Redigan with Pax Christi, Michigan, and also with FOSNA, Michigan. It's my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker today, Jonathan Kuttab. Jonathan is the Executive Director of Friends of Sabeel North America, FOSNA, co-founder of the Palestinian human rights group El Haq, and co-founder of Nonviolence International. Jonathan is a founding director of Just Peace Advocates Movement for a Just Peace, a Canadian-based international legal and human rights not-for-profit organization, and is president of the Holy Land Trust. A well-known international human rights attorney, Jonathan practices in the US, Palestine, and Israel. He was head of the legal committee negotiating the Cairo Agreement of 1994 between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization. His articles have appeared in the Middle East Institute, Arab News, Arab Center Washington, D.C., Al Jazeera, the Electronic Intifada, and others. He provides analysis regarding international law and human rights, understanding the reality on the ground, what options are possible beyond a two-state solution, and Christian Zionism. We have planned on being joined today by our dear friends, human rights advocates, and life partners, Huwaida Araf and Adam Shapiro, who are going to respond to Jonathan's talk. As many of you know, Huwaida is currently on her way to Gaza on the Handala as part of the Freedom Flotilla, a nonviolent grassroots movement to break the siege of Gaza. The crew is entering the most perilous leg of the journey this weekend. And so we hold them in our hearts and prayers, as well as Adam and their two beautiful children, Mayar and Diar. What we'll do is pivot, and after Jonathan's talk, this will allow us time for questions and answers. So we'll open it up to the floor for Q&A after Jonathan's presentation. So at this time, our heartfelt welcome to Jonathan Kuttab.
Thank you very much. I am very pleased to be speaking today after this wonderful, wonderful, uplifting praise service that we had this morning. We really needed it. I needed it very much. I'm also pleased to be speaking after yesterday's wonderful keynote address by Dr. Maria Steffens, who really placed the proper context for the struggle of our time, for the ongoing crisis that we are feeling, particularly in this country, and for the specific steps that we can take and should take to deal with this crisis. I'm glad that that presentation was taped because I will be going over it, and I hope many of you will be sharing it with your communities. For me, however, I'm afraid that I need to really address what I think is the moral issue of our time. The situation in Palestine, Israel, in Gaza particularly, is truly the moral issue of our generation. And I say this not because I'm a Palestinian or because I'm particularly invested in it, but for very objective reasons. And I'll start by saying that never before have we ever seen a situation where there is a genocide taking place openly which we are observing 24/7 every day, and yet it's going on and on and on, and nobody is putting an end to it. When the Holocaust, the horrible Holocaust took place in Germany, many people claimed they didn't even know it was happening. Even Germans, we didn't know it was happening. It was until after the war that the horror of industrial scale killing and genocide was taking place. And in fact, people were so horrified that an entire architecture of international law was created to make sure it never happens again. A convention was made called the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was unanimously passed by the General Assembly of the United Nations. International criminal law began to develop and ended up with an international criminal court that would arrest and punish war criminals. The different organs of the United Nations, not just the Security Council, which is hampered by the US veto, but an entire architecture of organizations, of values, of structures were created to advance human rights, to advance human dignity, to ensure, in the rare event that wars occur, and it was expected that there will be few or no wars anymore, that they will be conducted in a more or less humanitarian fashion, avoiding civilian casualties, avoiding, for example, hitting hospitals or schools or places of worship or cultural places, ensuring protection for civilians who fall under occupation by an army, a foreign army that's not their own, a prohibition on taking land by force, the inviolability of states. You can't just attack a state because they are your enemies or because you have historical claims or you have historical challenges or interests or disputes. There are mechanisms for dealing with those things. In fact, people even dreamed of a world without war. And in fact, there were very few wars. And in fact, it was basically accepted that you can't just take somebody else's land or start a war just because of any reason. The only possible reason is self-defense. But even that was very carefully guarded. You have to wait to be attacked first. Well, preemptive self-defense, well, if they're actually in the process of planning an attack and you've exhausted all things, maybe there can be justification. But just to attack somebody because theoretically in the future sometime they may have the ability to attack you is ridiculous. And for many years that worked. For many years that worked. In fact, out of 194 countries in the world, since World War II till today, there have only been a handful, maybe 5 cases where a country tried to physically take over or annex somebody else. You know, there was Saddam Hussein in Kuwait, which he claimed was the 19th province. There was the Moroccans who took over South, the Sahara, Western Sahara. There was Russia, which tried first to take parts of Eastern Europe and now the Ukraine. And there's Israel, which took over the Golan Heights in Syria, East Jerusalem, and now it's taking over more and more territory in Syria, in Lebanon, elsewhere. But think about it. Only a handful. International law does exist. We desperately need it. All of us need international law and its institutions. And yet, here we have a case of blatant violation of international law. You know, one of the problems with the Genocide Convention is that you really have to prove that there was intent to destroy in whole or in part another people through killing, through moving them out of their property, through making their lives intolerable. In the case of Israel, intent is the easiest thing to prove because they say this is what we are doing. Never before has there been such open declaration by everybody, from the president of the state, to the prime minister, to the defense minister, to the council of ministers, to the journalists and pundits, to the commanders in the field, to the soldiers, of saying, we want to destroy Gaza. We want to eliminate it. There are no innocents. We will cut off all food, water, medicine. We will make it unlivable. Openly saying it. We believe they are Amalek. Interesting, Amalek. Amalek is a very dangerous concept in the Old Testament, where God ordered King Saul to eliminate and totally genocide a whole tribe called Amalek. It was a commandment. Kill every man, woman, child, and even their cattle. Don't spare anyone. Don't have any mercy. And when Saul failed to do that, and he spared a few of the elite and a few of the cattle, that was considered a sin. Now, let's be clear. Almost all Jewish rabbis since that time have said that the commandment of genocide, the Amalek commandment, is no longer operative, because we don't know who Amalek is. And therefore, you're not required to eliminate anybody. Until today, the modern day state of Israel, including its secular leaders, starting with Benjamin Netanyahu and on down, say, we know who Amalek is. The Bible commands us to utterly destroy them. Amalek. Amalek? Really? Genocide? The commandment of genocide is now fully operative in Israel today. What a shame. What an utter shame. The number of casualties, children especially, the level of destruction is totally unprecedented in human history. We've never had a situation where 80 to 90% of an entire country is destroyed, where all universities, marketplaces, houses of worship, Christian and Muslim, all are destroyed utterly, where there are no basis for living, when entire population is herded back and forth and shot and killed in the process, where there are more child amputees in a community of 2 million people than any other country in the world, where actual hunger is openly used as a weapon. Openly used. We are starving them. We will not allow any food in. Yesterday I was shocked to hear that of the trickle of food that was allowed in, supposedly, 1,000 trucks worth of food was deliberately destroyed and buried by the Israeli army. That was revealed yesterday. Unbelievable. Utterly unbelievable. Now, the Israelis tried their best to prevent the world from finding out, right? They don't allow international journalists to this point. And they target local journalists and their families. Over 230 have been killed. Yet still enough comes out that the world cannot claim it doesn't know what's happening. It is happening in front of our eyes. That's the first reason I say it is the moral issue of our time. Genocide is openly taking place while we watch it. Second, believe it or not, there is denial. Talk about gaslighting. I mean, I thought that Trump and his people would lie openly and get away with it and lie to your face, and you know they're lying, and they know you know that you're lying, and they go away. I've never seen gaslighting like this, which is, by the way, supported by significant elements in society, including the mainline press, including many civil society institutions, including, dare I say, in the church. I've never thought that even to call for a ceasefire, let's stop it, was controversial. Somehow needed to be discussed and debated. Stop it. Let's just stop it. Stop it. This is a moment of get your knee off my neck. This is a moment of I can't breathe. Stop killing me. Then we can talk about, racism and poverty and the reasons for it and how do you solve it, etc. But at least stop it. Stop it. I've never seen a situation where the narrative of the criminals, the genociders, was so powerfully prevailing that anybody who challenges the narrative themselves get attacked, get silenced, get criminalized as this. I've never seen a situation where the very architecture of international law that I started talking about itself comes under attack. It started when Netanyahu says if international law doesn't support us, we will change international law. We will use our force, our power, our wonderful friends in the United States to cripple international organizations, to withdraw from UNESCO and maybe even the UN, to punish and sanction the judges, the prosecutors, the human rights organizations that provide assistance to the International Criminal Court. Who ever heard of that? I mean, other than the mafia, who would actually threaten the judges and the prosecutors and their families and actually sanction them? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, we do have the tools to change that. People say, oh, international laws are problematic because there is no enforcement mechanism. Yes, there is enforcement mechanism. It's called universal jurisdiction. As a lawyer, let me explain that to you. Universal jurisdiction means there are certain crimes that are so horrendous that every single country in the world has jurisdiction to arrest and try those criminals. It started with the Nazis. You can arrest them anywhere in the world and try them. You don't have to extradite them anywhere because they are crimes against humanity itself. Furthermore, there is a duty on every country to ensure compliance with international law. You see, the United Nations doesn't have its own army. It depends on individual national countries to ensure compliance with the convention that everybody signed, even those who did not sign it. You see, international law develops in a very interesting way. If you can get enough countries, usually 2/3, to sign a particular convention and to implement it, it becomes binding on everybody. People say, oh, we didn't sign. The United States and Israel didn't sign the particular treaty for the International Criminal Court. Regardless, you are under duty to comply with it. Now, again, I say, this is the moral issue of our time. Because what is done to the Palestinians today is setting the rule of what can be done to anybody else. We know that in this country. It started with the BDS legislation. Boycotts, divestment, and sanctions. Non-violent tools for opposing whatever. Now, BDS has been criminalized in 36 different states in the United States. If you practice boycotts against Israeli settlements, you could be criminalized, you could be fined, you could be denied federal and government assistance, you could be denied the possibility to teach, the possibility to practice, the possibility to have contracts. Now, clearly, this is against the US Constitution. This is against freedom of speech. This is against the basic elements of a civil society. But now that they've managed to pass some of these laws, they are using BDS legislation for any boycotts. If you want to boycott fossil fuels, you may be running into trouble. If you boycott a company because it manufactures weapons or sells tobacco, or whatever it is that your favorite cause is, you could be also violating the law. Student activism. Whoever is in charge realized that the students know what's happening. They went out of their way, they started these encampments, they started calling for a ceasefire, and the heads of the universities and colleges got together and said, we better nip this in the bud. We can't allow students to influence public policy. And so they used the summer vacation to do exactly that, to make these encampments illegal, not only on Palestinian issues, but on all issues. Isn't it wonderful? It's the moral issue of our time. And then we can use our power and our influence to punish our enemies. Oh, Trump loved this. Trump loves this. So under the guise of supposedly fighting anti-Semitism, has nothing to do with fighting anti-Semitism or making Jews feel uncomfortable. I thank God that some of the most vociferous and courageous defenders of Palestinian rights are Jewish people. Including Jewish students at Columbia and Harvard. But under the supposed guise of fighting anti-Semitism and working against hate speech, it's a new act called the Hate Speech Act, supposedly in order to fight this hatred, this love for Palestinians. This is hatred. Now they want to have the power to determine, without due process, whether any charitable organization, 501c3, is supportive of hate and supportive of terrorism, and they can take away its 501c3 status. Interesting. It's going to come to you, all of you. You are all on the target, not just Palestinians. You know, I used to say, somehow, through God's grace, the Palestinian people will survive, but will international law survive? Will international morality survive? Will the ability of the church to speak with authority on moral issues survive? Never mind the Western world generally. The blatant hypocrisy. It's funny that this whole thing came right on the heels of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. When the United States decided suddenly that it liked international law, that it wanted the International Criminal Court to pass a warrant against Putin, that it wanted everybody to get together and put pressure on Russia to stop its aggression. Wonderful. Right on the heels of that comes the events in Gaza, and Putin is laughing his head off. Tell me some more about international law. Tell me some more about human rights. Tell me some more about not attacking civilians. Tell me some more about not annexing territory that doesn't belong to you. Tell me. What moral right does it have? But see, I'm not really concerned with those issues. I am more concerned with the theological, spiritual, ethical issues that we are facing. My God, I've never had so much attempts to close down a discussion as I have had the last 2 or 3 years. Thank you. I thank God for the previous and the current Pope who have taken a proper moral position. His Holiness, even in the ICU, would call Gaza every single evening to ask about them, to pray with them, and to show solidarity with them. I think the fact that there are any Christians left at all in Gaza is a direct result of the action of the late Pope. And yet, if the truth be known, most of the Catholic bishops in this country have failed, have refused to address this issue. And we have to name names. There's an organization called Faith in Action. Any of you know about it? Good, very solid, very progressive. Progressive except for Palestine. They have refused to address this issue. I had somebody arranged a meeting for me with their chief executive to discuss this. After 2 years, it was becoming impossible to continue to be silent. So he agreed to talk to me, and 5 minutes before our Zoom call, I get a call saying, "No, sorry, it's too difficult. We can't even discuss it. We can't even discuss it. We have to figure it out internally somehow." Shame, really, shame. But I mean, even very good, very progressive people have been caught into this trap. I don't know the reason. Well, I do know some of the reasons. Some of the reasons, of course, have to do with the failure of the Catholic Church during the previous Holocaust to take a position. Generations after that, we are living with the moral consequences of our silence in Germany. Are we going to be living with our silence on this Holocaust? On this genocide? This is taking place right now. We don't need your guilt feelings. We don't need for you to look back and say, "Oh, we should have done something." No. Now is the time. The knee is on our neck now. Our children are being starved now. You cannot claim you do not know what's happening. And I want to say that even some very, very good people who have been willing, I am amazed, I am pleased, I honor the fact that I have been invited to speak by Pax Christi. Amen. But there are other Catholic organizations, very good, very charitable, very progressive on almost everything, that have been very reluctant to speak out on this issue, or that speak out with a kind of reluctance. I really hate to talk about this, because some very, very good friends of mine who really are good and who really are trying, nonetheless, are reluctant. And they speak and very hesitantly. Why? See, this is the point of morality. This is where taking a prophetic stand becomes important. You're not called upon to change the world. You're called upon to be a witness to the world. God changes it. God produces the change. But we have to be faithful. We cannot be timid. We cannot be silenced. We cannot allow ourselves to be placed in a corner where we are too worried about what we are doing. After all, What does the church have other than its moral authority? Who was it? Was Napoleon or somebody else who said, how many battalions does the Pope have? Doesn't have battalions. The Pope doesn't have battalions. The church doesn't have military power. The church doesn't have bombs and tanks it can utilize to put an end to evil. It has its voice. It has its moral authority. And when the church loses its moral authority, it has nothing left to offer. I know I was supposed to speak on a kind of different issue, which is what is the way forward? What solution is there? Can we move beyond the current political conundrum? And I have thought a lot about it. And I know that many of you care, and whenever you bring up these issues, you're always asked by your interlocutors, well, what's the solution? How can we move forward? What about the state of Israel? Does it have a right to exist or to defend itself? What's going to happen to the Jewish settlers or the Jewish Israelis if they stop killing and stop fighting Palestinians? Where is the solution? And I've done a lot of thinking about that because I really believe that Israeli Jews, for whatever reason they ended up in our land, should be allowed to live there. Shocking, huh? The truth is, both Palestinian Arab nationalism, the idea that this is an Arab land, Palestine Arabiya, and that all these Jews coming from all over the world, from Ethiopia, from the US especially, in Canada, from Europe, because they were persecuted in these countries, have nothing to do with us. The Holocaust didn't take place in Damascus, in Germany. And the pogroms in Poland and Russia, and the Inquisition in Spain. And I want to make it clear, the hatred of Jews and Judaism is a sin, is a fault, is a horrible stain on Christians. But it's not our fault as Palestinians. So when we say as Palestinians, Palestine Arabiya, these people are settler colonialists coming by force to take our land, yes, we have a problem with them. But I would say also that Zionism, the idea of setting up a Jewish state as Jewish as France is French, where the Jews are dominant and in control and in the majority, forced majority by any means necessary. This idea of Zionism, I know there are different kinds of Zionism, but the prevailing form now is clearly against Palestinian nationalism. And these two forces are at each other's loggerheads. And it's a zero-sum solution. They're mutually exclusive. Every additional person that is born to Palestinian mothers is a threat to Israel. Every additional Jewish immigrant that makes aliyah and goes and lives in Palestine is a threat to Palestinians. Every dunam of land that gets taken from Arabs and given to Jews is a loss to us. Every institution that serves Jews at the expense of Arabs is a threat to us. These two ideas are mutually exclusive. Let's face it, and let's not lie to ourselves. They need to find a formula to live together. Many people thought the two-state formula is the best. In 1967, the Israelis claimed, oh, we only started this war because, again, preemptive, because they were going to attack us first. We have no interest, we have no ambition, we are not trying to take anybody's land, we just want to live in peace. That's what they said. And many people believed them, myself included. And we thought that the solution was, okay, since they don't want this land, they never intended to take it, why don't we take this land, 22% of Palestine, make it a Palestinian state, living side by Israel, the Jewish state. So the two-state solution became the accepted formula for resolving the problem. But Zionism started putting up all these Jewish settlements throughout the 22% that was supposed to serve the Palestinians, to the point where now you have about 800,000 Jews living in these communities in the occupied territories called settlements. So at one point, I had to realize that the two-state solution no longer works. We need a new solution. What solution is there? Well, I decided to do a little thought experiment. So what is it that a Palestinian state does for me? Why do I want a Palestinian state? Well, I want a Palestinian state, so can I have a flag, a passport, so that I can live, so that I can travel, so that I can come and go? And why is it that Jews want a Jewish state? I asked a Jewish rabbi once. He said, you're a Zionist, you want a Jewish state. Why do you want a Jewish state? What is a Jewish state? How can a state be Jewish? It's problematic as a Christian state, by the way, or a Muslim state. Well, he said, after everything that happened to us, again, in Europe, I want a state where any Jew, anywhere, no questions asked, can go and be able to defend himself. I said, maybe I can give you something better. How about a state where any Jew, anywhere, anytime, no questions asked, can go and live where he doesn't need to defend himself because nobody's out to get him? Is that possible? I said, yes. You only have to give up one thing: exclusivity. That state will be Jewish as you want it to be, but it will also be Arab. Because 7 million people living under that state today are not Jewish. And I say to my Palestinian Arab friends, yes, Palestine Arabiya, but there's 7 million people living in our Palestine who are not Arab. And they're going nowhere. And they have to live there. So Palestine can be an Arab state, but it will also be Jewish. Wow. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. We can have a single state that's both Jewish and Arab. So I wrote a little book. I think you'll find it in the back. It's called Beyond the Two-State Solution. I'll make a little commercial for it.